Welcome back, everybody, to today's phenomenal episode of the A to Z of Property Strategies with Mr. David DJ Clouter. Not in his dinner jacket this week, though. Very nice to see you, David. What are we doing?
Nice to be here,
this
Andrew.
week.
We are at a transitional moment. We're going to transition from P's onto R's, even before everyone's very eyes during the course of the next 20 minutes or so.
Superb. So if we're on P, we're still on P's. I don't know how many P's there must have been. I mean, you must be a bit of a shark or something with these P strategies. So what are we starting with today?
Let's start with the Jaws music and property sharks.
Oh dear. I was only joking when I said property sharks, but so tell me about property sharks, David. What do we all need to know?
We need to know that property sharks are unscrupulous people who are attracted to the world of property by the money. And in some cases, they even know how the markets work and they know the right things to do, but they take people's money and scarper anyway. And some of them have ended up behind bars, not enough of them in my view, and a lot of people have lost a lot of money along the way. So how can we protect ourselves against these kind of unscrupulous individuals? We're not going to name any names today, but you'll know who you are. So a bit of diligence helps. Look at the companies that these people have got. If you can read the accounts, have a look through the numbers, see if what they say on the stage or these days on the Zoom call appears to make sense, appears to sort of back up what they're saying. Preferably, now, one of the good things in this day and age is that we have forums where everybody discusses all this kind of thing. Oh, here's my property dog, by the way. There he is. It's not a bad idea to post on a forum. Anybody had any dealings with Sid Blog, for example? I wouldn't deal with that one, that fella. Then see what comes back, and if it's overwhelmingly in support of this guy, and if the people who are speaking up for Sydney are not members of his or her team, that always helps, because obviously they always have their people who jump onto forums and praise them. That would help, and maybe when you're talking to people about possible collaborative ventures and things, make sure that they're compliant with things like PS 13.3 with the regulations about venturing up. If they're not, then that's a sign they're probably dodgy to start with. Make sure that you have very clear expectations of what's in it for both parties. Make sure that you have a plan B, because things don't always go according to plan A. And at the point where our plan A goes wrong, again, we don't want all the money in the suitcase and the guy on the plane to Buenos Aires. Other cities exist, exotic destinations for such folk. Basically, common sense, I think, is the thing. I've been stung in the past, so it happens to a lot of us.
Well, I was going to say, you raise a couple of good points there about checking your due diligence. I mean, there's things you can do. Social media is really great for stalking people. And I say this in a really nice way, but go stalk the person on social media. See if what they're saying is actually holding water. Go and physically look at their sites that they've got as well. If they claim to have sites on the go all the time, go and ask to look at one or two of their current sites. And again, I've supported quite a number of people who've fallen foul of property sharks, and the one thing that amazes me is the lack of paperwork that sometimes exists for some of them. So have a look at the agreements that are being proposed. If it's two sides of an A4, it's probably not worth the paper it's written on. Have a solicitor look over anything that is going there. And also, yes, ask a financial advisor or somebody who you know and trust to analyse the business that's being proposed to you. So be very cautious, but you don't just get property sharks who take your money and run off with it claiming it's going to be for an investment, you also get property sharks who claim to be experts and claim to offer training, but when you actually look at the due diligence on them, they've only just come off their own training course and they're now out selling a course. It's not really a depth and breadth of experience. My sort of top tips there is to sort of look at the person, look at the transactions they've done, look at how long they've been in property, and by that, how many years have they been through an economic cycle where you hit a speed bump. If you don't have somebody who's gone through a speed bump period and they've just come off a course, they've done a quick cheeky refurb, they've got this HMO, it's 100% full and it all sounds glorious and rosy, and they've never had to fill it 3, 4, 5 years into the cycle. They've never had to deal with voids, they've never had to deal with bad debt, and they've certainly never had to deal with an economic downturn. I mean, at the moment we're in a COVID downturn as we record this, and that's brought on all sorts of pressures, such as government saying to tenants, you can take a payment holiday. It's actually not a holiday, it's a deferral, and I'd like to clear up the language there. And if you've never been through this, then how can that person be teaching you, coaching you, mentoring you? Because they haven't got the experience, they haven't got that t-shirt to help you. So be wary. Property sharks are not good things, and I think we've all seen people who are not so good. We don't publicly name and shame, leave it to forums where they get outed there. David, anything else you'd like to add?
Well, yes, one more thing is that if it seems to be too good to be true, it probably is. So if these guys are offering you, 12% return on your money or whatever, well, where are they going to make their profit? And how much profit are they going to have to make in order to pay you the promised return? And that's always a big red flag, because they're going to have to make basically double what they're offering you.
Absolutely. And therefore, how are they buying a property so cheap? Now, we all know, you and I, we both do development projects where we've added value and expended time and uplifted the value, but kick the tires. Don't take... I always say, follow the money and have politely speaking, a bullshit radar, liar, pants on fire to everything they say, and evidence it. That way it will protect you and protect your hard-earned from being parted from it.
Yes, and for example, I don't know, if they can get you a terraced house for 20 grand or something, you've got to, first of all, look at recently sold comps in that area, which you can do online, Rightmove or on the land registry. Go to the original source, and the chances are that's going to be a pretty bad area, and it might be full of narcotics dealers and this kind of thing. And you don't, I've been to viewings where I've had to step over needles and that kind of thing, and did I buy in those areas? Well, it was pretty obvious, but if you're not the one on the ground doing that diligence, I could have seen that deal online and thought, wow, that looks like a bargain, and it most certainly wouldn't have been. So I don't think... it's a bit better now. You can find out a bit more about an area online. There are websites that allow you to drill down, and there's also Google Street View, so you can see that monstrosity, whatever it is, an old gasworks or something that's opposite, or a rubbish dump or whatever, opposite this beautiful house, which is nice. But there's nothing really that beats boots on the ground, and whenever I would be thinking of investing in a new area, I will go there and I'll spend a day or two walking around and, pre-COVID, having lunch at the cafe and having a gossip with them and, talking to the neighbours and all that kind of thing to try and get a feel for something. And I want to see what it's like on Friday night and Saturday night, for example. And it's no good going to see a property at 10 in the morning when all the hooligans are asleep, because that's what hooligans do. So drill a bit deeper. Do your research, or for example, HMOs that have been offered in towns where it's a one-horse town, and then whatever it is that they do in that town closes, and all the temporary contractors or whatever go home, and people are left with these beautiful properties empty. So all that sort of thing, and common sense is key.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, I'm familiar with an organisation that directs people to towns such as Hull that you've mentioned, Stoke, Liverpool, and they're asking them to create high-end HMOs. Yet the basic research is that the social demographic of the occupants there is not high-end. It tends to be more social housing, or a high proportion of social housing. Therefore, they're telling you to build the wrong product in the wrong area. And it's funny, I talk to agents around the country, and quite a few agents turn around and they say, we know when somebody's been on a course or seen Sid who's taught them this, because we have 26 people and they've set up these high-end HMOs and there's probably only 4 people who would occupy them. So they end up putting DSS into high-end HMOs and not getting the returns they wanted. So do your market research, do your diligence on the people who are giving you the advice. Anyway, I'm on a hobby horse here.
Remember there was one group of, probably more than one group, at least one group of trainers where the local estate agents wouldn't deal with any of their trainees at all. And as soon as they walked through the door using the sort of stock phrases that they'd learnt, the doors were shut rapidly in their faces. Not literally,
yeah.
But you know.
And the key thing is, there isn't any secrets in the property industry. So don't get wooed by, oh, come on this course and you'll learn all these secrets. There isn't. What they'll do is fill your head full of jargon, and then you go out into the real world and agents, vendors don't understand a word you're talking because you've just suddenly learned a new language that they don't understand. So the secret is you've been taught stuff that's irrelevant.
Exactly. I went on a property course myself, and that was with a shark. It was in about 2003 or something, a long time ago. It was one of the early ones. And I still have never had the opportunity to use the rule of 72. So there we go.
So tell me, what is the rule of 72, David?
72 divided by the interest rate or something is the number of years it will take to double your money.
Right.
But have I ever had occasion to use it in my day-to-day? Well, I haven't used most of the stuff I learned at school either, to be fair. The anatomy of an ant is not something that motivates me on a day-to-day basis. But anyway, shall we move on?
We should move on. We could do a whole couple of episodes just on sharks, couldn't we? And how to avoid, how to protect yourself, due diligence to undertake, how to read the accounts of, how to get information on them. But no, that's not what we're here. We're here on the A to Z of property strategies.
We could doorstop them as well, which would be great fun. With there's a guy on Radio 4 called Roger Cook who used to do it as watchdog, but we're not here to do that. Fun as it might be for us, but not for them. And we might get a broken nose in the process. So, pubs into flats is our next topic. And, well, the one thing that instantly springs to my mind, and do feel free to jump in, Andrew, is that there's always opposition from the local community that you're destroying the local community. And it's not covered by any of the PD rights as far as I'm aware. And so it's a taller order than might otherwise be the case. But there is one little kind of shortcut that can often be made to work. Well, there are several. I mean, you've got to show that your pub hasn't traded for 18 months and all this kind of thing. You've got to do a lot of explaining before you'll have demonstrators outside. You ruined the local area and all that, and that's not very good when the agent's trying to show around the new buyers. Have you come across, Andrew, the micropub?
Yes, I have come across micropubs, and I've also come across where convert the uppers and leave the ground vacant as another tactic on them. And in these COVID-driven times where just trying to get a pub to stay open with rules of 2 meters and 1 meter social distancing and wearing masks and goodness knows what, I'm surprised any of them have survived the 7 months or so now with virtually nil income. Yeah, they might have taken out a bounce back loan, which we did some videos on up here. But really, they're propping the business up with a loan that has to be paid back. And are people going to go back and party as closely and intimately as they were, packing themselves in? I don't know.
It took a long time, I tell you, after Spanish flu. It took 2 or 3 years for people to get out there again, although Spanish flu obviously was a much more serious thing than COVID, in my view. So that's just my personal opinion.
If you agree with David's view, drop a comment down below, and if you don't, drop a comment above, and I'll answer the one.
Yes, so the micropub thing, which is quite an elegant thing, which I heard about long before COVID or anything like that. The idea of that was that this huge sprawling pub only had 3 regulars who went in there, so why not make it a tiny little bar, and why not have 3 or 4 car parking spaces, and then when you go in there it actually looks full. Again, that doesn't kind of work during this time of recording at COVID, but by the time you see it there'll probably be about 10 vaccines out there, so times change. But so the thinking behind that is that you could build on most of the car park, you could develop all of upstairs and a lot of the back. It would be quite profitable, and there would still be this sense of community. And for the person who took on the micro pub, there'd be an instant and permanent clientele living upstairs and at the back.
Yeah. Well, some of them also set up micro breweries on the back of them and make niche beers, because if you look at the number of new beers, and I mean, I'm sure we've got a rack of beers behind me here, we have got more micro breweries popped up in the last couple of years. We're almost competing on a par with Belgium and the Belgian beer.
Wow. I'm speechless. It takes a lot to do that, doesn't it? But that's really something else. There are some pubs in Cambridge who they have like beer of the week, and they scout around and find all sorts of exotic things. But to have I hadn't heard of the microbrewery concept. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, no, popular.
Shall we move on to refurb shortcuts?
Refurb shortcuts. Wow, we might have to split this over a couple of episodes, because this one's going to be a biggie.
There's a whole long list, isn't there? And I'll start with one of my favourite ones, which is to do the refurb in the right order with the right people. And you don't want you want it done as quickly as possible, because you're probably borrowing on bridging finance, and so time is of the essence, as they say. You don't want people turning up out of sequence, so you don't want, after the plaster is finished, the sparky comes in to do first fix. You just don't want that, and so the people have to arrive at the right time and in the right order. And something that's one of the little things that I do, quite apart from that, is you can have multiple people working on site at the same time if you're kind of clever. And so again, you need to think about the order that these things happen. And one of the things that I always try and do is I try to get the kitchen and bathroom plastered up first, because then the tilers and the people who fit the cookers and the cabinets and all that kind of thing can be beavering away there, while the plasterers are bish-boshing in the other rooms. And so that's probably my number one refurb tip, which can probably shave a week or two off the length of the job. Other than that, well, where do we begin? I mean, dip and strip for the doors is a great thing. If you're going for that old, my favourite type of property is the old Victorian ones, and they have so many coats of paint on them, you would run out of fingers and toes to count them. And then in the 1960s as well, they thought it was very fashionable to cover them with a sheet of hardboard. So you'd cover up all the dimply bits, and then you just splish-splosh that with some white gloss, and then you had a modern 1960s looking door, and it was terrible. So you can come into those houses, strip that off, and then you see kind of magnificent doors underneath. But what you then do is and some of them, if they've got rising butt hinges or something, you just lift them off the hinges or take them off the hinges, and a lovely fella will come round in a lorry and take them away and dip them in a vat of something, and they come back beautiful, and then all you have to do is wax them and everything, and often they'll supply the wax and tell you what to do. So, so I'm very fond of that because that modern pine look is very fashionable nowadays, and that's the easiest way. You don't want to spend 2 weeks with a blowtorch or something, and then you're going to scorch it anyway. And it's going to get black
Well,
marks on it.
also
And blah, blah,
the
blah.
paints of those days, I was going to say, are full of lead. So you don't want to be heating it and breathing in the fumes because you're killing yourself. All for the sake of saving tuppence halfpenny and a bag of crisps.
Very true. Talking of lead, when you're doing your refurb, you're going to probably come across lead pipe often in the where it comes into the house. But it's useful to know that that lead pipe isn't ever so dangerous if you're in a hard water area and it's been there a while, because it's all nicely lined with calcium for you. So, so that would be a refurb tip that you don't really necessarily need to, in many cases, get the water board in to replace all that. But the joint between the copper bit and the lead bit is a bit delicate, shall we say? So we need to be sort of very careful around that one. But then, yeah, there are. I mean, where do we begin in terms of what we got to do? Because these modern fellas, they won't accept a campfire in the middle of the living room floor anymore. You just can't get away with it. So you've got to have your central heating and all these kind of things. And it's very important to cost all that stuff in when you see a kind of new house. A gas kind of type thing you can do. These gas safe fellas are very expensive. So what you can do is you can get somebody who's just your ordinary run-of-the-mill plumber, and he can run all the pipe work from where the meter's going to be to where the appliances are going to be. He's got to leave it all exposed. And then when it's time to test it all and wire everything up, the guy will come with his thing with mercury in it, although they probably don't have mercury in them anymore, but to test all the pressure and all that kind of thing. And he can test that pipe work, and if he's got any concerns, he can see it all. And so then you can get it signed off by the expensive bloke and installed by the cheap fella, which is always a kind of good thing. And so that's nice. And have low-skilled people to do the low-skilled jobs would be another tip, so that when you've got the strip out team, that could almost be someone like me. And in fact, I have done that sometimes. So not every time, but just for fun every now and again.
I'm thinking of a movie there with Prince Charles doing a sketch on TV, you being a stripper.
That would be a thing. So when you first get, especially your probate thing, it's full of stuff that's been there since the 1930s or whatever, and it's all got to go. And somebody's got to go in there first with the with the hammer. Some of it's a bit unhygienic. You see sinks where you think that something's going to pop out and grab your arm and drag you down into it. So I'm not terribly keen on those. I did do one of those houses once, had masks and all sorts, but I tend to leave that to the experts now.
Yeah, I remember a house I did, and I didn't fancy being the builder when he took the bathroom carpet up. I think the carpet walked to the door.
Well, there are these properties, aren't there? And I'm sure you've had walk rounds of them as well, where you have to clean your shoes on the way out.
That was one in particular, that one was.
So, you know, such things do happen. They're out there. There are good margins on them because nobody will touch them with a pitchfork. But yeah. You know, nothing comes without some kind of price.
Yeah, that sort of property, it's for the investor marketplace only. It's not really aimed at homeowner marketplace, because you generally wouldn't get a typical mortgage on it. But no. I'm conscious we've been running 25 minutes, David, and
oh my lord,
I hate to break up a good thing, but I think we've got to say goodbye to our audience today. So it's been brilliant. You've learnt about property sharks. You've learnt about refurb shortcuts. And what else have we done, David?
We did pubs into flats.
So we've covered a lot today, and we might pick up some more on property refurbs with you very shortly in the next episode. So stay tuned. Hit the subscribe button, share if you like this, and David loves it when you hit that like button and subscribe, because he does backflips. Do you remember in the last video? He was doing backflips. So on that note, it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from him.